CEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in with us in another episode of INCRadio Chatline, where we have conversations that matter. I am your host for today, Tony Rose Valenzuela, broadcasting from Troy, Michigan, and I'm not by myself. I do have my friends here with me in the hangout today. I'm just going to call them out one by one. I'll call out the other girl in the hangout because she looks very lovely today. Hey, Arnie.
Hello, I'm Arnie, and I am actually here in Vail, Colorado, where it is a freezing 18 degrees.
That's Fahrenheit, right? Just to clarify.
Yes, Fahrenheit, not Celsius. I wish it was Celsius, but no, it's Fahrenheit.
Oh, gee. Okay. So what about somewhere warmer? I don't know I would assume Texas is warmer. Probably, yeah. Texas is warm. Yeah.
I guess that would be me. Yeah. 59 degrees here in Fort Worth, Texas right now. So real nice weather, finally.
That's so cold for me, to be honest.
I'm surprised. It's not that much warmer because here it's like 56 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's not too far from there. But it is cloudy here today. It was cloudy here today. So I guess that I don't know if you would say that affects like the weather. But yes, also
it'll be like 80 next week though.
So that's Nathan and Elsa, by the way. I don't know if they mentioned their name.
Yes. I just realized we forgot.
Right.
And EJ, where you at? Because you said it was warmer, but you didn't say where you're at, EJ.
Yes, I'm in Rockford, Illinois. Yeah, everyone.
Yeah, right.
So if you're wondering where that is, that's near Chicago. Well, near, like 2 hours away near.
Near. That's near for us in the Midwest, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, that's near for us in the Midwest. But it's good that we're kind of from all over the place. Not all over the place, all over the world. Not all over the world, but all over the United States. I guess not all over the world, but that for those who are tuning in with us in the comment section, if you are tuning in from around the world, and I hope you are, we do want to hear your thoughts on today's topic because, if you're able to see the thumbnail, hopefully, and the title, we're talking about what happened after what? After was it 4 years? No, more like 3 years, because it started in 2020, and I think it officially ended somewhere last year in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Can someone verify this? I just remember taking a picture of it.
I thought technically it's still going on though. Like, COVID's still out there in whatever variant, but
yeah,
true.
And the lockdown itself has ended, I think.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you're at. Because when I was in Texas, our lockdown did not last more than 2 months.
Right.
It was like they were opening up. They just limited what you can and cannot do. But we weren't locked down compared to like other places like California and stuff.
That's still crazy to me to think about because. Okay, so let's backtrack, right? It was officially called. So we're talking about the pandemic. If you didn't guess, what happened after the pandemic? Let's just kind of backtrack first, though, because globally it was declared as a pandemic, I believe, in mid-March, right? It was like somewhere in mid-March, and I just remember hearing like, what does that even mean? And then in Michigan, at least, we kind of had we were on lockdown. But then we had kind of like variances of like, oh, we're doing okay, and then no, we're not doing. We're not like
I think the problem was when it started to go down. Of course, the limitations of what you can do also started to loosen up, and people started hanging out more, and that's
it wasn't even that. I feel like our restrictions didn't like change too much when like in Michigan. It was just that maybe I think a lot of it was the weather too, during the summertime, and then when it got colder, we just kind of had like that influx of like there were points where we made headlines because it was getting like really bad in Michigan, which I'm sure was true for a lot of East Coast too. I remember seeing them there. But it's interesting the different ways that it's kind of impacted us. Like for me, I felt like I didn't feel it as much because my mom was considered a how do we call them? She's not frontline, but there's another term for it.
Essential.
Essential, yeah, she was considered an essential worker during that time. So we would still like go out, and I would have to take her to work. And there would be times where we would even have to stay like overnight at her work because she would like work the night just because they were just so short on staff. And that was like an interesting time. So I feel like I didn't feel the isolation as much as some of maybe my other friends did because they were really stuck. I don't know if you guys were Arnie and Nathan. No.
I did not feel it at all because I was still going to work every day because I was working at the airport at the time. So even though our flights were limited and everything, I didn't have that option to work from home like all my siblings did. They all got to stay home and do their work, but I still went to work every day.
Yeah.
What was your commute like?
Here in Texas, even though like
No,
No,
my commute was awesome because like what normally would take me 45 minutes on a regular day during the pandemic, I was getting to work in like 20, 30 minutes, which was great because there was nobody on the road. And then gas was so cheap. I think it went down to like $1.08. So I was like excited, you know, and then when it ended, I'm like, oh man, now it's back to traffic.
What about you, Nate? I heard you were starting to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna say that even though Texas, the lockdowns were just for I think the 2 weeks, and then things were just opening up. They still had those effects where, like, individual businesses still wanted to take precautions. So even though like the government didn't necessarily restrict what we could do, it depended on who was in charge of where, as far as like what the restrictions were. So we still had effects of the pandemic. Don't get us wrong. We still felt that. Plus a lot of people didn't know like how to handle this, and what were the true ways that it would spread around and the effects and whatnot. So everyone was, taking those precautions. So there was lots of people wearing masks everywhere and, just trying to be really cautious. And, at least in that first year, even though here in Texas, we weren't restricted by the government, that much.
AJ, well, where were you? I know you tend to move around a lot. Where were you during the start of pandemic?
We were in Cincinnati, Ohio when that first started. I remember the night my parents told me that they just announced like the first cases in the United States, and like we were worried, but I forgot which state it started at, but it was like pretty far from where we are. But in just a matter of days, they're like it reached Ohio already. Like we got our first cases like in Ohio it was near where we were too in Cincinnati, and that's like when everything like started like locking down. I remember just feeling like a bit unsure of like what the stand like when they said like lockdown, like everyone has to stay indoors. Like how are we gonna do our grocery shopping? Like what's gonna change? But at the beginning, it was supposed to be I think only a couple of weeks, right? Only for a couple of weeks they said, and then it just kept extending and extending, and I think that's when it started like setting in like this is gonna be like a really long like lockdown.
I think it might have depended on where you were, right? Because just basing it off of like what Arnie and Nate were saying.
Most of the beginning of the lockdown, I would say we spent in Cincinnati. Actually, not most of the beginning. Most of it we did spend in Cincinnati. Since the next place we lived at is after Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken, it's like Kansas. And when we got there, it was already starting. I think it was only like the first few months that we were in Kansas before it ended, but it was pretty much the same thing where like you could only like go outside to do like grocery shopping, like just to buy like supplies, but mostly you're supposed to still stay like indoors.
Was that craze like did that affect you guys just as much? Was the whole toilet paper thing, like, was that a big deal in Texas? Did you notice that?
Yeah,
Arnie,
we
you're
got hit by that.
laughing.
I remember resorting to coffee filters. It's like an old camping hack that you can use coffee filters for like everything. So yeah, when there was no toilet paper, we switched to coffee filters for a
I
bit.
mean, it is paper. In a way.
For me, I mean, for me, I don't think I felt it in any way because I usually go shopping at the warehouse kind of a thing, and I already had some, and I live by
Mhm.
myself, so it's not like I used a lot. So for me,
Sure.
I honestly did not feel like anything like with everyone freaking out and starting to just buy everything off the shelves and everything. I never did that because I already had what I had, and I didn't think I was lacking in anything, I think.
But did you notice the grocery stores, were they wiped to the ones that you went to?
It
when you were
was,
shopping?
and I mean, not even just that, just even like with bottled waters and just,
Mhm.
like different necessities. I noticed that. And then also where the shelves weren't stocked as much.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if that was just, for whatever reason. But like I said, because I did not stay home at all. I was always working, and I was always out and about. I didn't feel it as much, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get a better read on your guys' experiences, because that plays a little bit into what our topic actually is, right? It's the after part. Because I
Mhm.
feel like everybody has had their just different varied experiences that maybe the impacts of what has happened to us post pandemic are a little bit different.
Yeah,
Like,
and I think for me, because like we said, since Texas wasn't as closed off as like other places, I was just happy because, because California was closed down for so long that my
Mhm.
nephews actually came to stay with me for a month because
Nice.
they knew, hey, at least we can go out to eat in Texas and all that compared to California. And then when I would visit my sisters in California, I felt like I was trapped because we couldn't even go out anywhere, you know we couldn't go out to eat anywhere, so you really did have to go cook at home. And then because California was locked down so much, even though family was nearby, we weren't going to each other's houses,
Right.
because everyone was scared. And so the only way we got to talk to each other or see each other was through video chatting. And we would, make it a point, like once a week we would video chat because that was the only way we could see each other and the kids. We couldn't really go to each other's houses, which we were so used to.
Mhm.
Did you guys ever experience like celebrations on video calls, like doing birthday parties or any of that stuff through the yeah?
Birthdays, we would pray. Like if someone from, well, it's different. If someone's like, it's like family in the Philippines, so we didn't really have a choice, like pre-pandemic either. So like, we would do like prayers for like if someone's celebrating their birthday, like just on video calls.
I
Yeah, my
think for
son had
us,
a virtual birthday during the pandemic.
okay, my nephew, I felt so bad for him. He graduated. And we had,
Oh,
so we couldn't, we couldn't even, I mean, like all we could see is his name being posted up on the school, but he did not have a graduation, which
yeah.
I thought, and the thing was because he worked so hard in school and he got good grades and he had like different honors and everything, and he couldn't even have a graduation. So I knew he was really upset about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know. I just thought of my a close friend of mine. She hers was college, and she was supposed to walk in 2020, and I felt really bad because I know that her degree, it was not a fun one. It was not a fun one to get, like, just so to speak. But what was cool about it though was that the school actually offered a walk for the students. Like 2 or 3 years after that, I think it happened just like last year, or maybe I think it was just last year, like sometime in September when she was able to walk. And I'm glad that they were able to offer that. I know that's not the experience for everyone, but that's one of the things I think that was kind of cool. Um, like post in terms of compensating for stuff. Yeah. Right. I don't know. But
Oh, speaking of compensation, I just remember this awesome thing. Like my phone, like our phone provider did, where they offered. I don't know if they did this for you guys as well, but they offered like unlimited data for like the entirety of the pandemic, like the whole 2-3 years that it was. Like we had unlimited data. Like on our phone, because usually we'd only have like I think 5 GB of data. But
I think
during
there's vouchers. They gave like vouchers for,
no, it
I
was like a
believe.
text message. They sent us a text message saying that they upgraded our data plan to like to be unlimited. Like it was to help with communications during like the
Yeah.
pandemic. And yeah, like I thought it was like a really cool thing to do. Sorry, my cat just jumped on me.
I think there's a lot of stuff that was given kind of like as a freebie. Like I remember like certain video calling, conferences, like they allowed, free accounts just to have unlimited access to different things. I thought that was nice, of the different companies that helped out. But then again, post pandemic, that all went away.
Yeah.
So
And I know with my nephews, they got free internet because they needed it to go to school.
right.
So with the families that didn't have internet, they actually got it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, this thing happened for, I want to say, because what I remember seeing in, I think it was May 2023, is like when they officially called it, like it, I mean, it's still around, right? Like COVID is still around, but it's no longer as big as it was. So they put a close to it in like sometime in May 2023. But even up till now, I feel like we still feel lingering effects of what happened to us during the pandemic. And I think we have a lot of different, I guess, experiences, not just in where we are, but even just like generational. I feel like, I don't know if it's harder to talk to people now, but I feel like sometimes it feels that way. Did you guys experience that?
Something we've heard. That's something I've heard people, well, people my age or around my age, like tell me. It's like hanging out with them. Sometimes they're like, one of the comments I hear is like, like it feels awkward to actually be in person. Like it's like, and I felt that too. It's like, I don't know what it is in English. Like it's like it feels like this is something new that you're experiencing. It's like the
I don't
thing.
know if it's that way for me. For me, I just feel tired. I just I just feel more tired now.
I
Hmm.
mean, like I agree with you. I do feel more tired because when I actually got sick, I don't feel like I recuperated like as because usually you get sick and then after a while you're fine. But I
Right.
think because with this one, it does have linger effects, like they said. And then like with my nephews, because they were doing online schooling, they were doing everything online, that after it had ended, he's all like, oh, I want it back because I enjoy staying home and going to school in my pajamas. And because school was virtual, they could be doing other things,
Right.
besides just going to school. And so he actually enjoyed it. And then whenever we go out to eat now, because they're so constantly on their phones, because that's how they were communicating before. And I'm like, dude, put your phone away. You need to start talking to people, right? He goes, I am. And I'm like, yeah, you're talking to your cousin who's right there in front of you over the phone instead of in person. So I would have to force them to get off their device just so that they would talk to each other, or so they would talk to us instead of sending us text messages. But I think they got so used to you know, even now after pandemic, my nephew's so used to just doing ordering food and getting it delivered, because that's what happened during that
Right.
time, where sometimes we'd go grocery and they're like, oh no, we're doing pickup. I'm like, what do you mean we're doing pickup? We're gonna go inside. And goes, oh no, I already ordered everything. We just have to go to the curbside and pick it up. And I'm
Wow.
like, okay, we could go in the store now. And they're like, no, because they got so used to it.
It's
And then
convenient.
and then of course the whole ordering online and just having it delivered, to your house. And I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Like I said, because I had never experienced that. But for them, now it's like the norm. Whenever we go into different accounts, I see them like always ordering things and getting it sent to the house. And I'm like, you guys go outside and go shopping or something. Quit shopping online.
Do you
Like,
prefer to shop online versus are you I like touching the stuff. Like I like
I can't do
being
online.
it.
it
I
depends.
can
Like,
do some things. I feel like I still prefer to go in person. I feel like that's been something that's kind of shifted. There's been a lot more ordering online than ever before, I feel like, just compared to before.
Yeah, and because a lot of retails, especially like the mom and pop shops, a lot of them closed down because of the pandemic. I
Right.
know some restaurants that I used to go to that, they just couldn't survive after the pandemic. And so they've closed down. But even with retail, I do see it a lot where people will shop online. I still prefer to go to the malls and everything. And even the malls are empty compared to what they used to be before.
Mhm.
I see that too.
It's just a convenience. I think we like the pandemic like caused a lot of like conveniences to be like discovered. Is that the right word for it? Like the curbside
Well,
pickup.
they made ways, basically. Like people would make a way because it
Mhm.
wasn't otherwise an option before. And then once they realized that, oh, we can do that. I'm just gonna
It's
do
just
this forever.
convenient. Yeah, it's just convenient to do it now. Like that,
Yeah,
Like,
and then like even with us, like pre-pandemic, we had so much business travelers on a regular basis traveling every day for work meetings and for conventions and everything. And then when the pandemic hit, everybody was doing everything online. That after pandemic, we haven't had our business travelers come back because companies now can see, oh, we can do this online. We really don't have to send people. And so people aren't flying as much. And so even the clientele that we have that are flying the airlines, they're people like who's never flown before, so they don't know proper etiquette or they don't know how to act in public anymore. I think is what we see compared to before. And I think people who were like locked up in their homes for so long forgot how to interact with the public. At least that's what I see in my line of work.
Yeah, you kind of see that. People are, I mean, basically like a big reset button was hit on everybody. So whatever, patterns and uh, routines that you had, right, those got interrupted, and then everyone developed, new routines. I mean, it only takes what they say is like 40 days to establish a routine or a habit, and it could take longer to get out of that. But yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the conveniences now. So some of the things I don't want to go back, but I mean, a lot of things too, like being able to go to the grocery store, like I value that a lot. So I know, like, even though we weren't hit that hard here, I was ready to get back to normal as soon as possible,
Mhm.
yeah, even with all the risks.
But with my sisters, like I said, because they got to stay home all the time, they're homebodies now. Like they won't leave the house if they don't really have to. And I'm like, okay, pandemic is over. They're like, no, we just love staying home. They'll just stay home, watch movies all day, or like I said, order things. And I'm like, no, we need to get out.
They're just more comfortable, right?
Yeah, and I think because they just got so used to it.
Is there any other stuff that you guys can think of that's like that used to be normal that's no longer normal? Like when you go out and you're just observing people. Like what used to be normal. Like I probably won't experience this anymore because I won't say that because maybe we never know. But like with schooling, right? Like snow days for us here. I know in Texas, like you might not get that as much of a snow days, I feel like are obsolete now because you could just have them log on,
that's
go
it
to
is now.
school online.
There's no snow days anymore. Like if
No.
it's snowing really bad, you just do school online. That's
Yeah.
that's something we've discovered, technologically during the pandemic. Oh, we can do school this way.
See, but we never had that in California or Texas. There was no such thing as snow day. We
Well,
we
for
only
us
got
in
our
the
we
Midwest.
only got our Thanksgiving break, our winter break, and our spring break, and that was it. Okay, so we didn't have the snow days you guys all had.
That used to be, I remember my senior year when we had way back when we had, remember that polar vortex? I think it was like back in like 2013 or 2014. We had snow days like every week. Like there was maybe two or 3 weeks out of the second semester that I had where we didn't like once it started to get warmed up, but that's a separate thing. But I
So
feel like
is that-
that's obsolete now. Just you wouldn't have to have a snow day anymore because you just have the kids log on. That's one of like the normal things that we would maybe look forward to that we just don't have anymore. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think for me too, the norm that I don't see as much is with the travelers, it's not we used to have like full flights all the time, and we had massive flights and they would always be full. Now we have less flights that are going out, but they're not as full as much. And then also traveling to other countries. It's different because of how it affected like other countries also. So
Mm.
I remember also
What
getting
are
annoyed, like when I would travel from Texas, like when I visited family in Massachusetts in the middle of the pandemic. So at that point, like Texas was just normal. And then just going to Massachusetts and like, really, I gotta like put on a mask when I go in a restaurant, and everyone has to be sit like far apart. Like this is silly. Like just knowing that we were fine for the most part in Texas and even in Florida, because my parents they're from Florida. They did the 2 weeks and that was it. They jumped right back into everything is wide open, no restrictions at all. And it was a really strange experience going from like, all right, I got to wear a mask in this restaurant, and then going to Florida and be like, no, you sit wherever you want, no mask or anything. And I don't think it was that big of a deal because my dad at the time was working at a funeral home, so he would kind of know, if it was serious. And he was telling me, like, it's not that serious, at least, they're in Florida. So just knowing that it affected other places worse, but they kind of expected that everybody would do the same thing. But it seems like, I guess, even up to this day, we don't fully understand like how this virus works and why it affected certain places more than others. But yeah, just you know, going to places immediately afterwards, and it's just kind of that lag, when you're already used to being back to normal.
adjusting?
And to add to that one, I did notice because that was the only time I was actually watching the news. Usually I don't, but the places that opened up early, our numbers weren't high at all with people affected with COVID, which I thought was pretty shocking because I figured, hey, we opened up and we stopped wearing masks before a lot of people, but yet with California, they had like more cases compared to us, yet they were locked down longer than we were. So I just thought that was weird.
I think also the volume of people, right, is compared to like when I think about like East Coast and like New York and California, and even like us here in the Metro Detroit area, it's just really, really like
dense population.
yeah, the density of everything. And I feel like that's another thing that I kind of noticed too in terms of like new normals or things that we had to, or things that are no longer normal, like even just in regular public places, like it's just like what Arnie said, it's not as much. Like I feel like if you were to go to a movie theater now, it's not as much as maybe you would have seen before. I mean, that you could attribute that to with streaming, right? Like all the streaming platforms that we have now online. But I feel like those aren't normal niceties that people, and there may be, like I would still want to go to a movie, but sometimes like even with my mom, we're kind of like wary about it because like, oh, there might be a lot of people. I feel like that's the mentality that I've gotten to. There might be a lot of people there. You might get sick. So I'm pretty concerned about her now that she's a little bit older and a little immunocompromised. So stuff like that.
And when you asked earlier, I just thought of something that's like used to be normal, that's not normal anymore, is like physical contact. I remember in the past, we would always hug each other, shake each other's hands, and it was not a big deal. And then now, even my friends who I used to hug all the time, they'll just put their fist out. And, so that's your clue to just fist bump instead of actually giving a hug. And so I think that's what I noticed too with just, friends in general or other family members who you used to always hug or shake hands. Now people are just into the fist bump or the elbow bump.
I feel like I'm the opposite though. I think I got more clingy after pandemic. I know everybody has their boundaries and I try to respect that. That's why like I always, like, is it okay? I try to be more conscious of that now, but I feel like I got more clingy after pandemic because I would just remember there were so many times where, like, let's say a friend was sick and this would be someone who's not even like 10 minutes away from me that I could normally just go over and check on them to see if they're okay. But then you're just like, oh, is this it? Like, because it was just, it got to a point where it was just so bad and you were wondering like, will I get to see this person again? And that's just me. That's just like my personal like, of course we trust God, but just trying to calm the panic sometimes. Like that's why I got clingy. I was like, oh, I want to hug you a little bit longer if I can now, because I just feel like there was none of that. Like, or just even if they weren't sick and they were just going through something difficult and all you had was this, right? You just had the video to just kind of, console them or, try to comfort them. But it's like, it's so different compared to being in person. I feel like I cherish that more now as opposed to before. So for whoever is the recipient of my clinginess, thanks for thanks for putting up with me, I guess is what I'm saying. So yeah.
I also noticed that like hobbies changed. So like even before the pandemic, I was always into going outdoors and hiking. But once, we were in the middle of it, well, what else was there to do? You couldn't go to any of these indoor venues. So you either stayed at home or you also went in the outdoors. And I just remember like taking vacations to, kind of out of the way places, like even like South Dakota, you wouldn't think would have a whole lot of people. And you're like, there's crowds everywhere you go, even when you're trying to go hiking. And, that became kind of like a mild annoyance because like I do this to like, kind of escape, everything and kind of find, a little bit of solitude, but there was nothing else to do. So everybody was out, in the outdoors. And also the same with like outdoor vehicles. So if you noticed that like, all right, if I want to go in the outdoors, I need something with 4-wheel drive, I'm going to get a truck. Well, everyone bought those up. So if you wanted to get, a certain type of vehicle that had that, well, everyone decided, oh, you know what, I'm going to be an overlander now. And so they bought everything up. So like people who were taking these things kind of seriously before the pandemic, kind of felt pushed out by, a sudden influx of people who got into the same hobbies. And, I mean, it is good that, people do that for themselves. And it's like, well, I had to rethink like where I go on vacation, try to go maybe where there's not as many people. But yeah, people's hobbies definitely changed. They started getting a little bit more active outdoors, which is probably better in the long run for society. I don't know if you noticed that where you're at, but I definitely noticed that here in Texas and traveling, mostly in these central states.
I don't know about outdoors, but I feel like social media played a part into what people picked up, right? Because that was the thing that we had to kind of socialize with everybody. So I just remember everybody baking. like, everyone just started baking. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I was just like, oh, okay, everybody's making bread now. I don't know if that was because of what they saw on TikTok or just they just saw these tutorials and they're just like, oh, okay, I guess I'll try that because I don't have anything else to do, right? But I guess that's in the same line, not outdoors, but
That's true because my nephews, like, they like to make things, but they really don't like to cook. But I do remember during pandemic, because they were watching the viral videos, they would start to cook because there's nothing else they could do. They couldn't go anywhere else. And so they were, creating things or doing things, not necessarily baking, but every time they would see something different that they'd never had before, they would actually try making it. And then, of course, they would post their videos of what they just made and share that with everybody. But that is one thing I think that was good that came out of that, is because they actually went into the kitchen to actually cook and not just to eat.
So it stuck with them. Did they carry
Yeah.
that over with them?
Yeah.
At least it didn't drop off, right? Because I feel like that would have
No.
been me. I would be like,
No. And it's good though, because then that's when my nephew went off to college. And so since he went out on his own, he was actually cooking in his apartment, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah.
nice. So there are there's pros and cons to it, right? Like there's some good things that came out of it. I mean, that whole time in general, like we don't want to make light of it, right? We don't want to make light of it and all the different things that people went through. But there with change, there are things that you have both sides of the coin, I think, right? There are good things that come out of it and bad things that come out of it. Is there stuff that you guys have seen like in your own lives personally, like for you, changes that you notice about yourself, like post pandemic? Maybe things that you like, things that you don't like. I don't like that I'm more tired. I mentioned that already earlier. That's mine. I just feel so much more tired, like all the time.
I mean, I feel like I take things for granted less. So I felt like, for the most part, I was living really comfortably before the pandemic. And then afterwards, after going through everything, just making sure like a lot of basic things I'm prepared for, but also being able to do things myself. So like I learned to work on my car during the pandemic so that, very minor things I can take care of myself. So that was one of the things that I got out of this that changed me.
Wow. I wish I could work on my car. Until now, I suck.
I would say don't
I should have
start.
learned.
You buy tools and then you feel like, all right, anytime something happens, I'm going to work on it. Don't even go down the path. I'll tell you that.
It's not that hard. There are some things that are easy to do. All you got to do is go online and they have video tutorials, and there's actually stuff you can do. Like for me, before, well, actually no, because I kind of did this pre-pandemic because my dad kind of made us learn how to do stuff. So I could change a tire, I could, do an oil change and do all that stuff, change the filters. But then anything major, that was the only thing I couldn't do. But
Yeah, see, I want to do the major stuff, but I would mess things up even more. I should have taken the time. That would have been the best opportunity, Melvi, to learn how to work on cars during pandemic. But anyway.
Oh, what I did pick up during the pandemic was gardening. Because my mom loves to garden. I wasn't really into it, but then I would get bored because if we couldn't go anywhere, so I was starting to plant things and grow things, and everything went great until either the Texas heat killed my plants or the freak snowstorms that we never get happened and killed my plants. So then I just kind of stopped after that.
I don't need anything else to I do that on my own. I can't take care of plants. Melvi, I don't know if you're any good at that or what things I guess you might have good changes and bad changes out of the pandemic, post pandemic for you. I know you were in California, right? You were in California during pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. First of all, hi everyone. Hi, listeners and viewers. So, post pandemic, what did I learn? I learned a lot of things. I learned definitely to reflect on a lot of different aspects in my life. Plants, unfortunately, I don't have the green thumb like my mom or my sisters do. I tried, it doesn't work with me. I love plants, but unfortunately for now, I am just content with the artificial ones.
That's all right. I am.
Every time they give me plants, I end up killing them. So I feel bad. But what I've definitely honed on is my skills in cooking and baking during the pandemic. I love to cook. I love to invent things. Sometimes I don't even follow the recipe they would give me. I would try it, but then I would tweak it most of the time and just go from there and experiment here and there. So, because, I love food. I love food a lot. It's my comfort as well. So, yeah, we learn a lot of things when it comes to hardships and experiences in life. And the pandemic definitely, I think, taught a lot of people, including myself, when it comes to embracing each day as they come and not take things for granted. That's one thing that I definitely reflected on mostly, because when you see people around you that you care don't make it, or things happen unexpectedly, it hurts. And so you learn from that experience. You miss them. I definitely miss a couple of, people, friends that didn't make it during that time, and some maybe others with families, but things happen for a reason, as the saying goes, right? But we still have to learn to move forward and learn from the past and hope and constantly do our best to make things better for the coming days ahead.
Yeah, I feel like with anything that's intense, at least in different things that I've experienced, like in what Melvie just mentioned, like in terms of loss, that's always made me more intentional. Sometimes I think I'm still trying to learn the balance between the two of like not worrying so much, like being intentional, but then also not overdoing it, like being excessively worried or excessively like, oh, make sure that you, I feel like because during the pandemic, I remember me and my mom, every time we would bring something home, like straight to the sink, we would like wash it. Like she would literally take like the dishwashing liquid and like soap it down and make sure that everything was clean. And I feel like it took a while to kind of adjust to not do that as much anymore. Like, are there any things that you guys kind of had to pull yourselves back from doing a little bit, or like unlearn, if I'm making sense in asking that question?
What's funny is because pre-pandemic, I don't ever remember using hand sanitizer, or anyone in my family
Really?
using. No, I've never. I would wash your hands with soap and water, and then so during pandemic, I know they kept telling everyone use it. I never used hand sanitizer because it would dry up my hands, so I would never do it. But then even now, I do still see people like everywhere they go, hand sanitizer here and there. And I'm like, I go, we survived for so long without doing that. And then all of a sudden now, because of the pandemic, all of a sudden everyone, I think, is more cautious or more weary. And like you said, even though technically there's still different variants and people still can get sick from it, I think for me, I still do the stuff that I used to do. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to go find hand sanitizer, but I'm still going to wash my hands like we used to, but not to the extreme of, oh, as soon as you touch something, put on hand sanitizer. As soon as you do something, put on hand sanitizer.
Mhm. Nathan, you brought up in a previous episode of Chatline, just kind of springboarding off of what you mentioned earlier, how with Texas, it wasn't as severe in your area, right? You had the 2 weeks and then it was pretty much lightened up, but it still impacted the way that you kind of saw things. Like, could you, touch more on that? Like, how did it make you change in that way?
Well, I had mentioned before that I had noticed just the fragility of society, and because there was a lot more that happened during the pandemic, and a lot of things that maybe we relied on or taken for granted, like, can all go away. Just to kind of leave everything kind of generic, because I think that applies to everybody. Everyone saw that everything kind of got stress test, during the pandemic, whether it was other people, also seeing society in general. And, seeing that, it's like, what do I actually place my hope in? So, do I count on the government to provide everything when clearly, like, they don't know everything, and sometimes they're just guessing, and sometimes it's for the detriment, of people. There's all sorts of stories about that where they made the wrong decision and people had to suffer through that. And so with that in mind, like, in the middle of the pandemic, like, I really started reinvesting myself in, like, my faith and in church. And just, I was like, when this ends, I'm ready to just completely dedicate myself basically to, to God, because in the end, I've realized like when everything, when all the chips are down, like, your hope in God is the only thing that you can actually have left, because you'll see everything else kind of go away. So that really changed my perspective, through the pandemic. And, I still have that now, like, just, this is what matters, because I'm involved in a lot of things in church. And it's like, this is what matters. This is what, you're going to feel happy that you were a part of, when you reach the end of your life, that, these things that I did, were meaningful. Because if I were to dedicate, because, I was involved in other things, before the pandemic, and just knowing that those don't matter as much, like seeing, especially like the youth grow up, in the church environment, in that community that we provide. It's like, that's important. So I really want to help out and contribute to that, which is also why I'm here on INCRadio, oddly enough. Anytime I'm asked to, help out somewhere, I'm like, absolutely, I want to help out.
The reason why I kind of, sorry, go ahead, Arnie.
And I agree with Nate on that. And I think the other thing that that I learned to treasure more is, family time. Because, pre-pandemic, like I said, my cousins, there's like 31 of us cousins, first cousins, and we treat each other like we're brothers and sisters. So we always made it a point, like, we'll hang out. But there were times where, oh, okay, sure, let's hang out. But if you're not free, it's okay. It's not a big deal. But I think after the pandemic, once we made plans to go see each other, I think we made it more, we tried to prioritize that so that we could actually spend time with each other. Because prior to that, like I said, sometimes we took it for granted, and then especially seeing the little kids, you're like, oh, it's okay, whatever. But then all of a sudden, after the pandemic, every time they're like, hey, we have something going on, I would make it a point to go home as often as I could so that I wouldn't miss out on those things. Because, you never know if we're going to shut down again. You don't know if everything will get better and go back to the old normal, what the old normal used to be. And so I think as each day passes, you just start to just try to figure out what is important and try to focus on that.
What do you
And
consider the old
unfortunately,
normal?
I was going to add on to that. So, like, unfortunately, like, because everyone was locked in and everyone was on social media, everyone kind of developed more of a global kind of community and view on things, and neglecting their own family and friends and, their own local community. And we still see the effects of that now. So it's like everyone is just thinking like, how can we make the world a better place? It's like, why not make your family a better place? Why not make your community a better place? So I do see that as like kind of a negative after effect of being locked down and everyone's brains kind of being programmed into, deprioritizing what's immediately around them and kind of focusing on things that they necessarily don't have control over.
Getting caught up in the different things, that different worries and concerns that are, I feel like the news became like more overwhelming, like during that time, because we were seeing so much, right? And being able to kind of like, I guess, like filter it and not let it affect you. I feel like that's how it's affected me, like internally. Like I kind of got very, what's the word? Like, I don't want to say I felt, I guess that's similarly how I felt with like my loved ones. Like I felt like helpless, like to help them. Of course, like that's not true, because as Christians we believe in our prayers and in what God can do for us. But just being able to kind of unlearn that's one of the things that I kind of had to kind of remind myself. And going back to Nathan's point in terms of what do we put our hope in that way. But I did want to ask you guys, because you brought it up, Arnie, the old normal. Like, what is the old normal to you?
I mean, like now, the old normal was if somebody coughed, it wasn't a big deal.
Mm.
It could just be a cough, it could just be an allergy, it could just be a sneeze. Now, you just do one cough, everyone looks at you like you're like you're, like you've got some disease that you're going to contaminate everybody. And if it's even to the point where I remember people used to sneeze all the time and they would never cover their mouths. Now you don't cover your mouth, people are going to look at you and they're going to say, hey, what's going on? Or stay away, because they think you've got something major when it's just allergies and stuff.
Yeah, Arnie, I remember we had one broadcast and you were sick, and then like a few days later, you're like, "Oh, I have COVID." I was like, "Oh, okay, great." We were just in an enclosed room for a little over an hour. Fortunately, I didn't get COVID.
Exactly. I didn't spread it to you, so we're good.
What about for you, EJ and Melvi? What would you guys consider what's your old normal?
Before, it was really easily to just give somebody a hug or shake hands, and sanitizers weren't everywhere. Now there seem to be sanitizers everywhere in every corner. And yeah, I kind of miss that, where when you see friends or even acquaintances that you haven't seen in a very long time, now there's that awkwardness when you see each other in person. And sometimes I'm because I'm a hugger, I like giving hugs, especially when it's for comfort, but not everybody's welcoming to that now. And I so different from before. And with what Nathan mentioned earlier, when it comes to our hope and faith, when it comes to church, I've also noticed that a lot of our youth members, in terms of their interactions and social skills, they definitely declined. So, being older than they are, I continue to encourage them to not look back and look past that and continue to have that social skills, to continue to interact with each other. And one, it's how we can learn to communicate better. Number two, how we're able to express ourselves also, not only amongst each members, but also in or within the family. And that's huge. It's really important. But when you're shut down and you're just constantly with your gadgets or your phone or a laptop or gaming, for example, and that's all you want to do in your life, and forget that you still have a life outside that, or in the world, or at church, or with family members, or with friends, then it definitely impacts one's personality. And that's where a lot of the youth now, which based on my observation, sometimes I don't even see them smiling as you walk past them, or even at school, because I'm very observant, and so I observe the people around me, or what's going on around me. And when I used to drop my son to school, and I would observe all the students, I would look at them and say, I don't see anybody smiling now. They're just either looking down, or they're on their phone, or they have their headphones, and then they're not paying attention to their surroundings, which actually breaks my heart. Before, you see them, hugging each other, doing high fives, or giving each other fist pumps or whatnot. But now you hardly see that unless they're very, very close, or a family, or a relative or something. So, that it's so different now. But people forget that as the days go by, again, we shouldn't take life for granted, because we don't know how long we're going to live in this world. So you might as well take chances and do your best to live your life to the fullest. Of course, remembering that, living a life in a Christian way also is very important. So, you gotta take things to heart. And again, not take things for granted, because if you're never gonna give yourself an opportunity to grow and amplify your life, then it's basically meaningless to just wake up each day without knowing what your purpose is, when you know that there is still hope. So that's what I've observed and experienced in my surroundings.
It's kind of hard to come out of something like the pandemic without being changed, right? I think we can all can agree that it changes us in different ways, whether we like it or not. And a lot of those things are hard to unlearn, right? Like when like what's been said, we become accustomed to things, or we get used to things, especially like to EJ's point earlier, like that battle of convenience, like what becomes too much, and finding that where it's like, navigating these different things, and these different changes that still what is it? It's 2024. It's we're the end. We're ending 2024, going into 2025, and just thinking that by March next year it would have been 5 years. To even think, it feels like we lost. Just thinking of the pandemic, I feel like I lost like a chunk of time, and it just like fast forwarded, and now we're here, right? A lot of There's so much, I feel like, that is, we don't even have time to unpack all in one episode, right? Like, just to kind of, it would feel like we'd have to go to do like a big therapy session to kind of to kind of like cope through all the things that we went through, right? And I don't say that in way of making light of it. I just mean, it's just so, there's so much to it. But if there's any lesson that you would want to share from, your experiences, post pandemic, how you've dealt with trying to cope through these different changes, like, what lesson would it be that you shared? Melby, I don't know if that what you just said now is a lesson that you want to share, but you're welcome to share something else. But what's something that is like a takeaway, I guess, especially even now as we're still trying to move forward and try to see where we were, right? Our old normal, and then going through that and now being in this new normal. What lessons would you want to share, not just for those who are listening, but even like for future generations?
When I see people go through tough times, including myself, and sometimes I wish I could do more, but I can only give encouragement to the ones that are either close to me or the one that I know, and do my best each day to make an impact on other people's lives through my actions and my words. And with that, I know life is filled with uncertainties indeed. And I think that's what's giving us fear the most, is when we are not certain of the next step if we decide to do something. But the thing is, if you won't try and you won't give it a chance, you'll never know the answer to that. Again, with living with what is and moving forward, or living with what if and then have a life filled with regret. Again, it's a matter of choice. So choose a path that will definitely benefit you, and give yourself an opportunity to always see the bright side of things, no matter how hard life is. Because for me, that taught me a lot of lesson. I've been through a lot in my life since I was young. And if there's one thing definitely that I can learn, or that I've learned throughout my entire years of living until now, is as long as you have faith, hope, and trust, especially in God, and also believing in yourself, then you know that whatever path you choose is going to be definitely the one for you, as long as you're praying for it as well. So stay strong no matter what. And don't forget to smile. And don't forget to have fun. Yeah, that's what I can say.
Anybody else?
I think for me is just not to take anything for granted, and appreciate what you have, but also don't live in fear, because if you live in fear, then you're not really living. If you're always worried about catching something, or you're always worried about something bad's going to happen, then you're not going to be able to appreciate what you have and live the life we're meant to live. So for me, it's just, things are going to happen no matter what. It's going to be out of our control, but it's not going to help us if we just coop ourselves up at home and not do anything and not actually live life.
For me, it's a reflection. So, we went through something that was very historic, but also if you reflect on history, like they went through a pandemic in the early 20th century. They had the Spanish flu that hit, and I'm pretty sure they also had a lot of similar thoughts, and society changed afterwards also when that happened. So from our context, okay, a lot happened. Now I notice a lot of people's behaviors, even though they're changed at the same time, it's almost as if, it never happened. Like you said, time just fast forward and now we're here. But reflection is very important because that's how we gain wisdom. Okay, maybe some of the things that we thought were right were wrong, and vice versa. Where were we in that moment? When we were, thinking a certain way, or if we were going along with certain trends, right? So it's things like that we need to take forward, those lessons learned, because there's a lot of value that can come out of that. Whether we went through something really negative or not. Are we trying to gain something out of this so that in the future, we're better equipped?
EJ?
I mean, what's there to really add to that? Just give yourself time. I know there's a lot of things that feel different for you, and I'm speaking to those who might be in like my age group, where like you can have a view of like what things were before. You're still in the stage in your life where you're still figuring a lot of things out, but like there comes this thing that just changes a lot of things, for us. So just give yourself some time. If you feel like you lost like a skill or something that you had, before, give yourself time to learn it again. Don't feel too sad about, like, for me it was, it was the skill of like being able to look at people when I talk to them. Like sometimes I find that difficult to do, but I'm taking it, one step at a time. So yeah, give yourself some time.
I think, with something as serious as a global pandemic, it's hard to really give a voice for all of the different experiences that people have had throughout those 3 years. And for those who are listening to this broadcast, we might not have mentioned what you went through, but life moves forward, right? Like what we always try to, I don't want to say campaign, but one of the things that we value, right, is being able to make choices, as Melody said, making choices and active decisions, things that we can take action on, right? Being able to find ways to overcome, and thinking about these things and having these conversations and not avoiding them, because that's how we learn, right? That's one way for us to kind of reflect, like what Nathan was saying earlier. We reflect through these conversations, seeing through others' experiences, what they've gone through, what they have to deal with, and being able to handle those changes, whatever it may be that you're carrying, this post pandemic. If we're even, like what we said, there's still a lot of things that are going on, but challenges will always come. Like what Arnie said, they don't stop. It might not be a pandemic that's weighing over you or being held over your head. There's going to be other things, but I guess the best thing that we can always do whenever we go through those situations is figure out who we are. I think that's the lesson that, for me, that I've always tried to cultivate, is figuring out who I want to be in every situation, whether it's a global pandemic that's happening, whether there are different things that are happening in the world. Like, who is it that I want to be continuously, consistently? And when I don't make it, like, how will I recover from that? How will I try again, right? How will I improve? And I like going back to what Nathan said about what you put your hope in. I think with something, different things that we face, especially that make us feel sad or that can really bring us down, it's a good reminder to kind of pull ourselves back and remember, like, what we actually put our hope in. Is it going to be other things that we can, see in this world, or is it going to be, our faith and what we're hoping for that's ahead, right? So this is a more serious topic than we've think we've had in the past few episodes, but hopefully there's been something to gain from it from those who are listening. Thank you to my panelists, my co-panelists, my friends who have joined me today in this broadcast. For those who are tuning in, please comment below and let us know what your thoughts are on this topic. We hope that this has been a conversation that mattered to you. We'll see you again next time on INCRadio Chatline, where we have conversations.
This is what I ask. Let me always dwell in the temple.